Hey, Midgardians, I'm Clay.
And I'm Joe.
Welcome to That Midgard Show. This is a podcast where we talk about the Midgard campaign setting published by our friends at koboldpress. We're going to cap off the Zobeck series with the Gangs of Zobeck, which can be used as antagonists and protagonists in any of your adventures. Honestly, we've only scratched the surface of Zobeck, and we will likely return to it someday.
Yeah, for sure. And one of our listeners who goes by Phantom Tim suggested that we cover all the locations mentioned in Empire of Ghouls, since we reference it so much in the Zobeck series. And we may just do that, or at least start to cover some of the areas that are around Zobeck.
Yeah, we'll do our best to keep things limited to lore and avoid spoilers. But first, let's wrap up Zobeck. Every populated
Yep.
city in Midgard has its population of scum and villainy, and Zobeck is no exception. There are always those who want to prosper from somebody else's labor, and those people put all of their creative energy to liberate money, goods, and even souls from other folks in Zobeck. Once the formerly recognized Spyglass Guild worked hand in paw, and I mean hand in paw, with the most secretive and widespread forces of the ancient Mouse King. Now, in the latest edition of the Midgard World Book, time has advanced for these groups and much has changed since the Pathfinder version of the Midgard campaign setting. Recently, though, a hidden rival has seized control of the Spyglass Guild and uses their new power to carve out an underground empire. And with regard to the Cloven Nine, there's been a mysterious death that has shaken that organization, sending the Diabolists running and breaking up their ring of thieves. And lurking behind it all, the mysterious smuggler named Redmass deals with anyone able to pay his exorbitant and occasionally unorthodox fees. In addition to the major players, there are many smaller gangs, guilds, and freelancers who operate in the gaps and go largely unnoticed. And this is an opportunity for you to introduce your own gang or guild to your adventures. But no matter what, each faction strives to seize control of the fluid situation and ensure that every coin that changes hand in the free city is clipped or shaved slightly. I love this line in Zobeck Clockwork City. Welcome to the thieves' world of Zobeck. May you survive the experience. Joe, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you were saying, there are just so many cool gangs in Zobeck. And even when we talked about the city councils and the government and all that, behind all that lies these gangs. They got their fingers in everything and they are everywhere. And probably one of the most powerful, or at least was one of the most powerful until recently, was the Cloven Nine. And we've
Yeah.
mentioned the Cloven Nine here and there before because we bounced around some of the taverns and stuff like that they hang out in and kind of control in the city when we're covering some of the districts. So the Cloven Nine is interesting because they're not just this normal group of thugs, right? They're actually a group of tiefling warlocks who lead this kind of thuggish cabal of old entrenched gangsters. Many have believed them untouchable until very recently. They have a leader. His name is Ezekar. He's
Mhm.
also known as Eyebite. And he is first servant to the archdevil Asmodeus. So this is a kind of an interesting group. It really has about 27 members, consisting of these human nomads and urchins and minions and stuff like that. But that's kind of the core of the group, and it does kind of expand from there, and I'll get into it in a little bit. But they kind of headquarter themselves in the Broken Seal Tavern, but they also operate out of other locations, including the Silken Scabbard, which we've talked about in the past. And they do have a lot of businesses. So some of their bigger ones they do is business in the slave trade. They do summoning. They deal in secrets and quiet killings, enchantments, curses, and even prostitution. So they kind of hold themselves apart and above what they consider the lesser gangs, and they don't really dirty their hands in normal criminal activity. They leave that to those other gangs. So they kind of have an interesting history because they were kind of once shunned by the other gangs. but they really grew into power, and they started flaunting that devilish heritage of theirs. Because again, they are at the core, their main membership is warlocks. So hiring them is a bit interesting. They say, or so legend says, the rumors have it, that it requires a drop of blood and to call their name. And they'll make their conditions and agreements very clear on what's going to be required, but they rarely name a price up front or specify a time of payment. So they're like, oh yeah, we'll do this job and you're going to owe us one. It's kind of, they'll leave that part very vague. They're like, oh, we'll do the job. This is exactly what we're going to do for you. And you're like, well, how much is that going to cost? They're like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about that later. So it can get a little dicey sometimes. Payment, when it comes down to it, payment could include the death of a loved one, a portion of the bargainer's soul, including several years of their life, information. That's one of their main things, is they deal in a lot of information. You might have to serve them, servitude, or possibly something even worse. You just don't know. But they always collect their fee. So when it comes down to it, they are more than just a gang. They're a bit of a cult. They worship Asmodeus, and he is, like I said, he's an archdevil. You can read about him more in the monster books. But they will actually claim direct blood ties to him. So they have always had this kind of air to them of personal invincibility due to their just magical prowess and their cruelty. They had a rep. One of their founders murdered this guy named Aked the Elder. And this really, really kind of shook up the gang. And they were kind of, for lack of a better term, they were kind of forced into hiding. They used to send out orders and jobs to all these subordinates and client gangs, and that all started to kind of slow down to almost a trickle. And they've really kind of pulled back. So they're now using like magically encrypted notes and blind drops and things like that because they're trying to tighten up on their security. They really are highly suspicious of everyone. They've dedicated a lot of their resources to finding whoever this killer is. When it comes down to it, though, like all this, their prowess, their invincibility was kind of an illusion. What it comes down to is that when they started, they were really just this simple group of street children who banded together for survival. It's just this hostile world, and these people kind of came together, and some of them took it more seriously than others. But now they're kind of, a lot of people who have joined with them have kind of reevaluated their loyalty to this gang, that they really joined as a survival mechanism. And this murder kind of shattered the whole image. Being warlocks, many of them have kind of forfeited their souls to this demon lord, and that payment is out there. That's looming. So they were angry to have all this years of work and all this stuff they put into it just kind of slipping away. And some of them even made pacts for like long lives to service to him, and they were just really not ready to just kind of walk away and give that all up. So they're fighting back. And many of the lesser members were just bored merchant sons, or just kind of people who are like, oh, I'm going to join this gang. And, maybe they were just rebellious youths who wanted to annoy their parents with tattoos and horn masks and body paint, but they really didn't have a real taste for violence. But the founders themselves, they are old and they are evil, and they remain extremely dangerous. So it is not a group to really still be trifled with. I mean, we're talking about powerful warlocks with ties to a demon lord. At the heart of them, they're dangerous. Some of their power has waned. Some of their membership has slipped a little, but they are still a force to be reckoned with in Zobeck, right? So kind of keep all of that in mind when you're dealing with them. But there's a bit of a what we call, I guess, the new order of the city with them, right, Clay?
Yeah. Time has passed, since the first printing of the Midgard campaign setting. And the Cloven Nine has since avenged Akkad's death, and they have tightened their grip on their illicit operation. To prove their point, they left the body of the person that killed Akkad impaled on spikes of the Puffin Bridge, and that leaves no question about what happens to those who cross them. According to the lore, they discovered a spy in their ranks who had collaborated with an assassin, and they ritually sacrificed him, using his soul to power a curse that withered and destroyed the left ring fingers of his immediate family. Now, what began as a loose circle of disaffected children from rich families, like you previously mentioned, is now a gang of bloodthirsty and ambitious magic wielders intent on carving personal empires out of the flesh of Zobeck. The Nine have consolidated their tavern hangouts into true bases of operation, securing public and private spaces where they can. They still dabble in gambling and extortion. Their locations also allow them to expand into bookmaking and drug dealing. Their access to the cartways from the Silk Scabbard means they can occasionally smuggle contraband, as well as people, and a shift from revenge-based diabolic magics to pure divination means that they can better track the Watch and their rivals, allowing them to grow their wealth and reinvest in additional security for their homes, reinforce cellars with casting spaces and cartway entrances, and bribes for low-level officials, the people who actually do the work in Zobeck. They bribe them to tip them off about raids and inspections. There have been changes in the political landscape, and that has meant changes in the gang status among the elite. The now openly present Shadow Fae ambassador at Winter's Kiss appreciates the Nine's attitude and methods, and he has found them to be effective agents when he wants something done somewhere in Zobeck, but doesn't wish to use his own assets. This has also drawn attention to Lady Marek, commander of the Blue House, and by extension the mayor, who both believe the Cloven Nine might be utilized to the greater benefit of Zobeck, acting as agents abroad in exchange for tacitly turning a blind eye to the gang's lesser activities, so long as those crimes don't affect the more respectable citizens of the Free City. They give them a pretty long leash. Now, the gang has only completed one such task for the Praetors, and the new relationship remains kind of in a probationary state.
Yeah, so the Cloven Nine themselves have an interesting structure, right? They're a council sort of structure. It's a gang of captains led by Azakar Ibite, but they are sorcerers, diviners, warlocks with devilish heritages, and each leads a crew of rogues and generally assisted by trusted lieutenants, including Karev, local thugs, and various street urchins. I kind of see this very much like a very organized crime, almost mafia type structure where there's crews. Like if you ever watched The Sopranos, think The Sopranos but with warlocks. That's kind of how the structure is. Like there will be a head of a group, and they've got their lieutenants, and then they might have non-made men that were working for them. They hire other people, so it kind of builds out that way, and it all reports up to the Godfather, in this case being Ibite. So it's a very cool structure. It's a very neat structure, and you can definitely have a lot of fun with that, even causing inter-gang rivalries and things like that to happen if you wanted to. If you were to take out Ibite, who would take over? Those different leaders could vie for that position. But due to the assassination, right, which, yeah, the assassination has been avenged, but they really have tightened up security, which I mentioned earlier. They don't discuss jobs. They don't discuss plans out in the open, over drinks at the bar and stuff like that anymore. If someone does that, they are going to receive a warning. They will get one free pass. After that, they get their left ear taken off as a reminder that the world is listening for a chance to spill their blood. A third violation is going to either mean expulsion, exile from Zobeck, or just straight up death. So they don't mess around with it. One chance is very generous for them. So I think one guy's lost his ear. And after that, everybody kind of got the hint. Nobody really breaks that rule anymore. So, but you can use that, if maybe somebody else lost an ear and you see this guy with his left ear missing, you're wondering why, follow that trail back, right? But there are a lot of really cool adventure hooks and stuff like that you can do with the Cloven Nine. The Clockwork City book has a few. They talk about one that's like this guy from the Collegium who passed away, and he's got this large collection of books that are being donated to the library. And these books deal with things like divination and enchantment magic, and the Nine has an interest in it, so they want to steal those books. So your party could either be the ones to steal that; they could be hired by the Cloven Nine to steal that, or maybe the Collegium got word of a possible theft and they've hired the party to protect the books. So either way, right? There's two ways you can play that kind of that hook. There's another one where there is a charity ball auction happening at the Old Strass bathhouse. There's this painting that they want, and they want to swap it out for a decoy, for a fake one. So again, are you the one to try and pull off this heist, or are you the one to protect it? So different ways you can play that. They've got a couple other cool ones. There's one called Seat of Power, where there's a bunch of public unrest, and the Free Council has kind of decided to add 2 new consuls to the board. So they're actually going to create 2 new government positions. And of course, everybody wants in on this, including the Cloven Nine. So they might want to try to put a proxy in, somebody who kind of secretly represents them. It's not going to be iBite sitting on the council, but somebody that he controls. So could that be one of the players or somebody else? Or maybe the players get wind of it and need to expose it. So again, a lot of different ways you can play that. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with the Cloven Nine. I've been using them in Everyone Lies. They're a bit of a part of that adventure, which is a great, again, introduction adventure to Zobeck. Great level 1 adventure. And, the Cloven Nine, you'll see them right off the bat, both in the Silken Scabbard and as kind of a group that you have to negotiate and deal with quite a bit. So probably one of the cooler, deadlier, bigger gangs in Zobeck. And like I said, I really like to lean into that very Mafia-esque hierarchy, that structure that they have. I think it's perfect, and it really works well in this city.
Yeah, I always see their security as a little bit more ruthless than what's printed in the book. You talk, you lose your head. You don't get it. You don't lose the ear. You lose everything from the shoulders up, or something like that.
Or your soul.
Or your soul gets ripped out of you in a very painful ritual and slow ritual. I love how you describe this gang as organized crime, a mafia like organization. I too kind of envision them being organized that way, particularly with the captains and all of their minions. And I could just imagine, you got to play the trope. You can play him like Tony Soprano or Don Corleone or however you want, or just not even use the Italian mob trope in this. You can bring in other cultures into this game on how to organize the gang that are described in the book. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of gang too that would have a far reach, right? Like they might have at least like associates, a sister gang in the 7 cities or something like that, right? Like I feel like they're a big enough organization that they've got allies in other parts of the world, and that they can mutually benefit from alliances with other gangs in other cities and stuff like that. So I definitely see them as having far-reaching influence.
Yeah. So definitely, if you have a tiefling in the group, definitely put that as an option for their backstory. That they may be a member of the Cloven Nine or a relative of somebody who is in the Cloven Nine. And you can't join because you have to go out and make your bones doing some adventuring or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe you don't want to join, but they're trying to force your hand into joining because of who you are, and you're trying to stay away from it.
Yeah, even better.
Well, there's other gangs too, right? What's our next one on the list?
Yeah, the Mouse Kingdom. Now, can you imagine that as a name for a gang, the Mouse Kingdom? We talked about this in earlier episodes on Zobeck, but the Mouse King has ruled in Zobeck as long as the city has stood. His servants includes halflings, humans, and various rats, mice, and other dangerous rodents. Supposedly, every rat and every mouse in the city obeys the Mouse King. Anyone refusing to give the Mouse King his due supposedly dies a death of 10,000 bites as the Mouse King's servants devours the fool. This might be purely a gruesome story meant to scare newcomers to the city's thieves' dens, but old-timers and most of the dock workers swear it's true. And of course, the tale becomes more graphic, and their prostrations of the truth become louder as the audience buys more drinks. Now, the Mouse King, they say, knows everything. The city's rats whispers to him all that happens in Zobeck. They even know when the river barge is about to arrive, so they can come to the wharves to meet it. This may be only rumors and, as the book describes, ratish propaganda, but many otherwise jaded people take great precautions to avoid speaking in the presence of a rat. And few beyond his servants have seen the Mouse King himself. Some describe him as a halfling were-rat that rarely takes humanoid form. Some believe he is a rat-were who takes human form only when it suits him. Some believe him merely the figurehead for the group, resulting from the presence of so many escaped familiars near the Arcane Collegium. Whatever the truth, the former Mouse King, who went by Theodore XII, ran the city's underworld in partnership with Urspet Samila until 14 years ago, while the servants of the new king, Mysie I, still take coin purses and snatch jewels. His funds mainly come from smuggling and the gambling halls called Sixes and Sevens between the Gullet and the King's Head's Tavern. However, the break with the Spyglass Guild has reduced the Mouse King's influence, and his rodent minions now swarm everywhere, seeking to regain that power. Now, the real secret of the Mouse King is that he wants Zobeck to prosper, because he is almost as rich as the Red Mask. At the same time, they are normally short-lived. They don't stay in their roles for very long. And rare indeed is the Mouse King who lives more than 5 years, which is the typical lifespan of the venerable rat. But Mysie has survived far longer than expected, and rumors have been spread that he has drawn on magic to sustain his unnatural youth. And regardless of the individual's longevity, the post itself is immortal. Each succession to the throne comes from the Council of Rats, held after the reigning king's death. The successor gains all of the memories and many of the skills and powers of the previous king. For this reason, the king is essentially unkillable, and he works to keep merchants fat and to keep the city free of foreign control. No one loves him, and only a few individuals of power swear him fealty, but the Mouse King is one of Zobeck's greatest allies. Now, Mysie I, he is described as a creature with ash-white hair and a thick mustache, and he favors these puffy red shirts and light weapons such as rapiers while in human form. In mouse form, he is always perfectly groomed, 2 feet tall, and with dark streaked pale fur. Back in his humanoid form, he is as short as a riverfolk halfling, though it is unclear if this is due to his youth or whether he is truly a halfling. Rumor has it, the king has a brother enchanted by the Arcane Collegium and a sister who has taken service there as a familiar. When prepared for an audience, he always wears a gray frock coat with golden buttons. He keeps his whiskers long and white, and he wears a golden crown carved with images of nuts, grains, cheese, and a strange spiral symbol. He usually holds court in a tiny chamber that only small creatures can move in without squeezing below the low ceiling. The king willingly hears petitioners out, though he prefers them to address him as Your Majesty, and he always uses the royal we. And the Mouse King has numerous followers around, either gray or brown rats, or green-jacketed soldiers with exceptionally fine white or brown mustaches. The Mouse King's current right-hand man is Yuri Tepek, a human horse thief from the Rotharian plains, who is known to toss an entire ale keg during a brawl. He has already seen two kings come and go and understands radish policies and magics well enough to know he would rather serve them than join them. He has rejected several offers of the moon gift, as some were-rats call their lycanthropy. He is honest, as long as he is well fed, and his rolls of fat conceal a lot of muscle. One of the Mouse King's more dangerous followers, Timon, a were-rat bard, has a sharp temper. He quickly takes offense and often spitefully casts suggestion within his music. Other servants merely carry poison daggers and can enter any house within the city with relative ease. In my mind, the Mouse Kingdom is super interesting. And having a essentially a leader whose memory is long because the spirit of all of the kings kind of roll up into a single ruler at a time leaves the option for creativity at your fingertips. It's fun. I love interacting with the Mouse King as much as I can. What do you think, Joe? Have you ran any adventures that involve that organization?
Not directly yet, right? I'm kind of seeding for it, right? Because I like them because first off, you gotta understand about the Mouse Kingdom is they more rule the underworld of Zobeck, right? They're kind of that on the underbelly of the city. They kind of deal with a lot of smuggling and gambling and burglary. They do a lot of like snatch thievery, things like that. But I also see them as a bit of a spy network. We talked about how they were linked with the Spyglass Guild for a long time, and we even talked in earlier episodes of the Blue House how Lady Merrick would provide them with, or at least provide the Mouse King with magical items and money to keep him as an informant. And even if that relationship has fallen out, they still have to be dealing in a lot of secrets. You're talking about a network of rats. They hear everything, right? I mean, they're everywhere and they're not noticeable all the time. So we mentioned earlier how people will take care not to even speak secrets around rats because you never know who's listening. So I really want to kind of play that up in my game that you're in the room and there's no one around. You meet your contact and all you see is a few rats scurrying across the floor. And you just kind of throw that in there. And then later on, somebody knows about the meeting. Well, it's either the contact or one of the party. They're the only people there. So who spread the word? Well, it was the rats. And as they explore the city more and they hear about the Mouse Kingdom and the Mouse King, maybe those bells start to kind of turn in their head. Those gears kind of get going. I just want to keep throwing the mention of you see rats. And they're like, why are we always seeing rats? Like, would you like rats or something, DM? Well, no, I'm trying to play that up and kind of seed that idea. So I think they're a cool thing. Like we talked about the tavern where there's the mouse store and stuff like that. The King's Head Tavern.
Right.
They have the mouse store for the Mouse King. It's funny because I think the Mouse King he has a stat block and creature codex.
He does.
And when I first saw that, right, I thought I went straight to the Nutcracker. Like whoever wrote the Mouse King had to have pulled that inspiration from the Nutcracker. There's literally a Mouse King in the Nutcracker that the Nutcracker soldier fights. So I think that has to be where the inspiration from it came from. It always makes me think of that, and I'm like, how could I use that in a game, right? Like, I want to figure out a way to bring the Nutcracker literally into Zobeck and do something with it with the Mouse King, like kidnapping a girl or something like that, and the party has to save her and go through that whole thing. I think it would be kind of cool. So I see a lot of potential for the Mouse Kingdom and the Mouse King in general. The fact that he's kind of secretly a good guy, like he's kind of maybe a bit of a Robin Hood, like a chaotic good almost type character. They say it's neutral, but he really just wants the city to prosper. He's just willing to do nefarious things to make sure that happens. And he has to bankroll it. So they steal and they do all this gambling and burglary in order to bankroll it. But it's a matter of, do the ends justify the means, right? So that's kind of how I picture them.
Yeah, I'm not sure Mizey is that altruistic. I think his point of view is if Zobeck is successful, I'm successful. I see him looking at it, from that point of view. He still wants to live large, and ensuring that the flow of goods and the flow of money through Zobeck continues. He benefits, the Mouse Kingdom benefits, all the better.
Right. If Zobeck was attacked, I see him helping the defense of the city in his own way for that, again, for the reason of if Zobeck prospers, he prospers. But I could see where other gangs would just be like, oh, let's sit back and let this play out. It doesn't concern us. I see him doing something about an attack on Zobeck.
Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me that you brought up the Nutcracker. I mean, that's a story that has lived in European folklore for centuries. So considering that the heart of the lore of Midgard takes inspiration from European folklore, it wouldn't surprise me a bit for Maisie to be based on the Mouse King from the Nutcracker. I also see like the larger lair being, an abandoned part of the cartways, opulently decorated from the Strauss era, and essentially just this auditorium full of rats that sit around in kind of a semicircle where there's like a central throne or desk where Maisie sits, and he's giving instruction to his loyal followers.
Yeah. And his arch nemesis, the Pied Piper.
Yeah, but if you do a Nutcracker based version, I want to play for sure.
Yeah, I got to think about how to pull that off. I've thought about it. I'm like, how do you really pull that off? Because it's kind of a whole dream sequence or something. So it's like, how do you pull that off with a party of players? Because I feel like one player would have to kind of be, or maybe an NPC kind of is the girl, and then the players are like the Nutcracker and his men or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a good Nutcracker movie they did a few years back, and maybe take some stuff from that. But yeah. I don't know. I think the whole idea of it is kind of cool.
Definitely a good holiday adventure for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. That could be a really good holiday adventure. I didn't think about that. That's a good idea.
All right, we have one more gang, right, Joe?
Well, yeah, this is a cool one. I like this one a lot. It's a toss-up for me between the Cloven Nine and this group, because this group has some political intrigue and some flair. It is a group known as the Redcloaks. And this is a kind of a misunderstood gang, mainly because it consists of a lot of kobolds. It's actually kobolds and humans, but it's pretty heavily kobold oriented. And they mostly kind of work at night. Even like the city watch and stuff kind of assumes that it's a kobold gang that operates out of the ghetto. And the lowest and most lowly minions are really kobolds, to whom the master, known as the Red Mask, who you mentioned earlier when we were talking about Maisie, the Red Mask has promised a much greater role in rulership someday for these kobolds. But there are humans, obviously, in this gang as well. And the Red Mask, he also offers a lot of wealth to his servants. He pays in gold and silver, and which allows, especially these kobolds, to not have to work the silver mines anymore, and to just really build their own mansions and rule over more than just the kobold ghetto in the city of Zobeck. So there's a lot of motivation for followers of the Red Mask. It's a well-paying gig, and the Red Mask is a very rich individual. So what most people don't realize, though, is that the Redcloaks use the profits from their smuggling and their banditry to fuel their true purpose of expanding the cult of Mammon, who's another archdevil, and he's the archdevil Wealth and Greed. So they actually have a big bankroll with enough money to hire all the mercenaries and assassins and alchemists and forgers and other specialists they require. So it's even said actually that some shapeshifters and like warlocks for hire and priests of the Red Goddess also serve the Redcloaks. But whether those rumors are true or not, kind of unknown. Do what you want with it. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I kind of tend to think it is at least partially true. I mean, when there's enough money, you could pretty much get whatever you need, right? So the Redcloaks themselves, like their kind of industry, is a lot of kidnapping for ransom, smuggling, drugs, counterfeiting, and they even will ambush the silver caravans from the mines. They headquarter out of the Wheat Sheaf Tavern and the Grey Mark Warehouse, which keep that Grey Mark Warehouse in mind here in a minute, because there's more to that. But right now they're red. They're led by the Red Mask, and he is a man actually named Maniko Tebernas, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he was actually once this very proud warrior of the Seven Cities. He was part of a noble house that was actually destroyed by the cult of Mammon, and he lost everything. So he had vowed to infiltrate and destroy the cult from within. However, once he made his way in, he was kind of seduced by their luxury and their power and started to kind of lose that motivation to destroy them and really wanted to become a part of him. He wasn't always the Red Mask. The original Red Mask, and this is the political intrigue part, the original Red Mask was none other than Lord Greymark Volstaff himself. And we've talked about him quite a bit because he was once part of the city council. He is like the keeper of coin for the city. He's a very, very wealthy man. We talked about how he might have ties to the Ghoul Emporium and how he wants to extend his life. There's a lot going on with this guy. He was actually the leader of the Redcloaks. He was the Red Mask for a long time. And as he got older, he retired and he passed that title on to Maniko. He still bankrolls the Redcloaks. He's still kind of their true leader and leads the cult and supports them from the shadows. So that's a really big kind of twist right there. If the players are to find that out, or if anybody's really to find that out, that he's actually this powerful cult leader. Maniko himself has kind of lost sight of his original goal, but I believe he was actually, if I remember right, he was a paladin. Don't know. They don't specify what type, but depending on how you play it, there's a possibility of kind of getting him redeemed and him turning on the Redcloaks and turning on Volstaff and changing that, but maybe not. Like he's kind of really lost his way. So there's a lot that can be done with that little bit of information. I kind of feel like the Redcloaks are a neat group. They're really kind of the bandits of the city. They're the I don't want to say they're the thugs, but they are kind of the thugs of the city. Having a bunch of kobolds on the payroll, definitely, I feel like they're more of a violent group, and they really want to expand that cult's influence. Whether the kobolds know about the cult or not, I don't really know. That's kind of up to you. They don't really talk about it much in the books, whether the kobolds know. Maybe some of them do, but I feel like a lot of the membership of the Redcloaks are in it for the money. And in the meantime, the cult could be a whole other group that, the Red Mask and Volstaff are just using the profits of the Redcloaks to fund. So I think there's a couple ways you could play that in your own version of Zobeck, however you decide to do it. But I also think that cult is another one similar to what we talked about with the Cloven Nine that probably has very far-reaching influence. So again, one of those groups that could be very powerful and very influential in the city and in Midgard in general. So I don't know. What about you? Have you used the Redcloaks at all, Clay?
No, not yet. But I almost see the Red Mask as kind of the anti-Batman, or one of the villainous organizations that Batman is always fighting against.
Right.
I like the fact that even though we know his name, we don't know his face. He may be a human, he may be an elf, who knows? Plus the connection with Mammon, the archdevil of wealth and greed. There is a lot you can do with that. I mean, this could be a hook to get your players into the 11 hells. Mammon rules one of the 11 hells. It could be another hook where information is power. That is something that you can use with any of the gangs. Your party needs information. They go to one of these groups and they say, sure, we'll give you that information, but you have to do something for us first. That could kick off a couple of adventures to keep your adventurers busy. It could be a situation with the Red Mask where various senior leaders of the gang wear the Red Mask, and to keep people guessing on the identity of the Red Mask, you'll see a Red Mask that is just different size, or different color of skin, or something with a more feminine walk, or what have you. I haven't really thought through that one. I'm just kind of riffing here. I really enjoy this group. Definitely try to figure out a way to use one of these groups in your campaigns.
Yeah, one thing I thought about, right, with the Redcloaks that would be kind of cool is they're behind whatever you're investing in. Doesn't matter what it is. They're behind it, right? And you start closing, you're like, all right, we know, we think we have a location where we might be able to catch them in the act, blah, blah, blah. And you get there and you maybe fight your way through some traps and some thugs. And then you get into the room and you're expecting a fight. And instead, all you find is on a table, a burning cigar and a red mask. Nobody in the room. Like you just missed him. He got away, right? But the mask is sitting on the table with a cigar still burning. And I was just like, that'd be so cool. Like just kind of lead them on and drop that here and there. Maybe you come in, you go into another place and you're investigating and nobody's there anymore. And there was dead bodies everywhere, but there's a single red cloak on a hook or on the floor, that's torn, that, got lost in the fight. Even just a shred of it on the window. I feel like it'd be a great group that's just elusive and you're trying to catch up to constantly. And when you finally do, what are you going to do? Because it's a powerful group. So I think there's a lot of fun ways to play with the Redcloaks. But I mentioned Black Eye, who's a kobold. You'll see his stat block in the Clockwork book. I used him as an introduction to my players to Zobeck and gave him a tour, and he was very thankful for them. He'll help them. He likes them. But he has ties to the Redcloaks because he's got a lot of brothers and sisters and cousins, and many of them probably work for the Redcloaks. So maybe the Redcloaks will end up assisting your players out of gratitude for helping one of their own. At least maybe you can get an introduction or something. A lot of possibilities. Lots and lots and lots of possibilities. So
Yeah.
I think you need to get him in there at some point.
Yeah. And again, the gangs don't have to be the bad guy. They don't always have to be the antagonist. They could really be used as a source to help your PCs overcome a certain situation. So definitely, don't ignore these folks as potential protagonists in your stories.
Yeah, or at least information brokers, right?
Sure.
Those three gangs are your big ones. There's some lesser gangs. We've talked about the Spyglass Guild in the past, which is a guild that's sort of a gang, that is sort of a secret police. They're a little weird. And then there are some smaller, lesser gangs. And then, don't discount just like, throwing a gang in there that maybe is up and coming and is rivaling, with the Redcloaks or with the Cloven Nine or something like that. Like I personally have used a smaller gang that was hired by the Cloven Nine. The Cloven Nine is the real protagonist, but the players don't know that yet, right? They're building up. They're going to get to this leader, and then they're going to find out that he was just the mini boss, and then you got to get it through the Cloven Nine. So, a lot of ways you can use gangs in Zobeck. It's a big city, and a lot of room for crime and mayhem and stuff like that. And I like that these two big cults also, or two big gangs also have cults running in the background, because we didn't really touch much on cults in our review of Zobeck, but there's a lot of cult activity happening in the background in Zobeck. So we'll hopefully revisit Zobeck someday. I'd love to have a guest on that could talk more about Zobeck, that wrote a lot of this stuff, and maybe we can touch on some of that. But definitely pick up the Clockwork City book and read through it. It is an amazing resource for this city. It is gold. So highly recommend picking that up and digging it. And Zobeck's a cool city, man. It is a cool city.
I loved our visit here. I have generally stayed away from Zobeck. I've used Zobeck in certain campaigns and certain one-shot adventures. Our series on Zobeck has inspired me to like come back and do some urban adventuring, in Zobeck. And again, this is where Wolfgang Bauer's settings all started. His mantra on world building is start with a place on the map and build from there, and use your players as a means to help you world builds as well. So Zobeck is awesome. Not the only place in Midgard to adventure, but it's definitely one of the places where you for sure want to utilize in a lot of your first or earlier games adventuring in Midgard.
Yeah, and there's adventures too that range, like I said, from level 1 all the way up to end game adventures that you can play in and around Zobeck. So, maybe start there, leave, head out to the rest of Midgard, come back. I feel like your players are going to form a real attachment to Zobeck, though. and it's going to kind of become a home for them if you start them there. I think they're going to really kind of fall in love with that place and want to protect it and be a part of it, and maybe come full circle. Like, I really want, starting my adventure there, I plan on sending my players all over Midgard, but I think the end game is going to come back to a big finale in Zobeck at level 20. Like, that would be ideal for me.
Yeah.
So
now we have a link in the show notes to a spreadsheet that's curated by Lou Anders. Lou Anders is one of the designers for Midgard content. Basically, it's a list of every single adventure and the locations of where these adventures take place. And if the adventure isn't clear about where it takes place, he does offer some suggestions as to where it could take place. So there's gobs of content in and around Zobeck. Definitely utilize that link, because there is so much adventuring content. Far surpasses, in my opinion, what Wizards has out on the market.
Easy. That sheet's a resource, because he breaks it up. He doesn't just say Zobeck. He'll go by region. He'll say, here's all the adventures in Crossroads. So if you're playing at Crossroads, you can look, and then you can say, okay, well, here's ones with it. Like, there's another column that says Zobeck or Margrave Forest or a specific town in the village in the Margrave Forest. So he gets very detailed on location, on the level range. So you can sort it by all sorts of stuff. And he updates that sheet pretty regularly as new content comes out, and posts it to the one of the Midgard Facebook groups, and keeps it up to date. So what a resource that is.
Well, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. Joe, how can people reach you?
Well, you can always find me on my YouTube channel, which is the GM Toolbox. I'm also on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. Just search up GM Toolbox. I'm on Twitter at GM_Toolbox. And of course, you can find me on the Midgard Adventures Discord server there as well at GM Toolbox. Go figure. How about you, Clay?
Yeah, Midgard Adventures Discord server is the best place to reach me as well. I'm at Clayton Thompson, and that's Thompson without a P. One thing about the Midgard Adventures Discord server is that is a wonderful fan-based cooperative group that is affiliated with koboldpress. It is a group of fans, pure fans, and that is where we talk a lot about Midgard lore. We share tips and tricks, we answer questions, and we offer organized play games, both online and IRL in certain locations around the country. Our community is open to everyone, particularly those new to Midgard and role-playing games. But we also have a dedicated channel for That Midgard Show on the server where you can post a comment. You can also post it in the show notes below if you watch us on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to hear from you guys. We love to read your comments. We've been very happy with all the feedback. So, please, like Clay said, comment, come and discuss with us, ask us questions. Not just me and Clay, but the entire council and other people on the Discord server are always happy to interact and ask questions and stuff like that. It's an amazing resource. Also, we do, by the way, have a That Midgard Show Twitter account. So at That Midgard Show on Twitter, make sure you follow us there and let us know what you think of the show. So if you do like the show, please make sure you do all that fun stuff like clicking the like button and subscribing to our channel. Spread the word about That Midgard Show, of course. Make sure if you instead using one of the podcast platforms, make sure you're subscribed there and leave us a comment or review there if you can. And yeah, like I said, we love you guys and we really appreciate everything. So that's it for today, guys. And remember, as Wolfgang Barr says,
strip it for parts and make it your own. Thanks a lot for joining us. Have a good one.